So I've worked in a lot of cities, mostly throughout South Florida, but of course grew up here and I'm glad to be back. And the one thing that I have found that resonates with all of the cities that are successful are the people. And it's the people that make our cities active. It's the people that actually we enjoy when we go to a city. Imagine visiting a city where there might be some really beautiful architecture, but you don't see one person on the street. Those are the kinds of things that make our communities authentic, and those are the things that we have to make sure that we're paying attention to create the opportunity for that shared public life within our communities. Think about place branding. When you think about place branding, and you think about some of the best marketing campaigns that are out there, you think about places that talk about the people, the activity, New York, the city that never sleeps. When you think about that, don't you kind of just envision the people walking up and down the street, think about what they're wearing, where they're walking, are they in Times Square? You know, that really conjures up that image of a beautiful, successful city. I have always thought about cities as human beings, as individuals. I actually had a consulting firm for a while. It was called Holistic Planning Group. I would meet people, I would hand them my card, they would ask me if I was a chiropractor. I'd explain, no, of course not. You know, we work in communities, we work in cities, but a community is not just a one piece or part. It's a part of many. It's a part of its people. It's how we design for the people and how we actually make sure that they're healthy. If a city is broken, if the infrastructure is broken, if the sidewalks are broken, if there's flooding, that's a sick city. If we don't have stores that are open on the street, that's a sick city too. And what does that do? It keeps the people away. Our people are our lifeblood, and we need to look at cities and treat them as such, and we need to be maybe like the downtown doctors, and that's always kind of what I've imagined myself. We have to diagnose the problem, we have to observe, and we have to communicate with the people. And then we have to come up with a plan of action. So urban planning has come a long way since the 50s and 60s and the suburbanization of our downtowns. Certainly we're kind of getting back into that mindset of people and places. We talk about walkability, we talk about sustainability, we talk about urban design in terms of being able to really, you know, enjoy the public life. The one problem that I have is that it's almost become canned. And in a lot of communities, it's actually kind of generically applied. And you can see that not just in downtowns, but even in new developments. You see the rebirth of the lifestyle center out in the suburbs, where we're trying to recreate that downtown feeling. And while there is, you know, activity, and there's the shopping, and there's the restaurants, and there are all those things that are there, what's lacking is the authenticity of the people. It's an attraction, and then they go away. What we're not doing is we're not engaging the people in the design of those places to really make sure that they're authentic, attractive, and reflect the community and the success that we want to show. So this is an example of what's called a public life survey, or sometimes a behavioral map. I actually had to do one of these when I was in college, and it's what really intrigued me about the idea about places for people. The class I took was called the Sociology of Architecture, and we didn't do anything other than go and sit on a corner and observe what people did on that corner. And then make our observations on what could we do at that corner to make that environment better for the people that had to be there. Whether it be just putting a trash can out there, or potentially a bench, or like in this instance, observing whether people were standing in a particular location and kind of gathering to speak, or watching people. There's been a lot of study on this, and one of the number one things that people like to do in any public place is just watch other people. So we just have to give people the opportunity to watch other people, and to be able to share experiences without having to be in somebody's place, so we can collectively share an experience while we're having our own personal experience in that public place. The other thing that we need to do is talk to people. We have to really communicate with the people that are going to be using these places. And I don't mean just have a public meeting and check the box. That's what a lot of the, you know, consultants will say, well, we had a public meeting. Well, we did this and we did that. That's not communication. That's a one-sided communication. Maybe you got a couple of ideas. But I can tell you, having done a lot of public place projects in my life, Oftentimes, the consultants that will go in and do those meetings won't even necessarily take your feedback when they go back to design it. Because they're thinking about their canned ideas of what it is. We'll put a bench here. We'll put a trash can here. I don't know if any of you have ever been driven down a street, or maybe there's been a recent streetscape project, and you see a street bench, and it's up against the curb, looking at the street. Who wants to look at the street? We want to look at each other. We want to spend that time experiencing each other. And it's also a proven fact. People would rather, again, look at people than look at flowers. So put the benches in the places where the activity are. But have the conversation, too. It's not just one-sided. Take that opportunity. Take those ideas. Bring them back to the people. Spend a little time in the place and just talk to people as they're out there doing things. One of the things that I've always done whenever I've engaged in a streetscape project or a public plaza or anything like that, the first people that I engage, interestingly enough, are the city public works employees that take care of the place. They're the experts on the place. They're there every day. They know where people are leaving their cigarette butts and there's no cigarette in there. They know where the trash cans need to be, and they know where people are wanting to gather. I think we heard another speaker talking earlier about the goat trails in the parks, and you probably see them all the time. That's the observation of how the people are using the space, because if they're going to use the space, they're going to use it the way that they want to, and they're going to figure out how to use that. And we want people to take ownership of those spaces, so we have to design them in that way. We can test our ideas. We don't have to go out there and just do it. There's been a big movement in terms of what's called tactical urbanism. And it's about just doing small displays or small installations places just to test an idea. I wonder if people would use this space if we actually created a space for them to use. Maybe we can build a parklet in a parking space. This is actually a really good example of the city of Toledo being one of the innovators in tactical urbanism back in the late 50s or early 60s, where they built pedestrian malls. And people came, and people used them. And they had sandboxes for children to play in, and parks, and they had an organist, and it was an active place. And it wasn't permanent. And as a matter of fact, people from across the country in other cities wanted to emulate what we had here. So it doesn't have to be permanent, but we can try it and we can test it. There's actually been some studies done that if you take a curb lane away or a parking space and you put public seating in there, you're going to increase pedestrian activity along that street by 75%, and you're going to actually increase the sales of the businesses adjacent to that location by 15%. So why wouldn't we want to do this? There's other urban benefits. There's been a lot of study done on the health benefits of urbanizing places, of providing the walkability, of doing the public places that people enjoy. We need to start thinking more about those opportunities. There's been significant study done that violent crime is reduced as well as property crimes are reduced within walkable neighborhoods. As we move into our future, we're going to have increased urbanization throughout the world. Currently, 55% of our population actually lives in urban areas. And by 2050, we're going to be looking at 75%. So we need to be thinking about these places now, because we're going to end up housing people vertically, and the public space is going to become even that much more important. These are going to be our front doors. These are going to be our living rooms. I'll give you an example of where people sometimes people don't believe it. They say, our community, we're so used to our cars. We like to have that right there. We're not going to really walk around, and maybe we're not going to use that public space because we're just going to zoom in and zoom out. Well, in Copenhagen, back in the late 60s, an architect named Jan Gehl, who's actually a very well-known urban designer, was tasked with building public plazas and public piazzas, similar to Italy's public piazzas in Copenhagen. And everybody said, not going to work. Nobody's going to use it. It's cold here. Why are you doing that? He went to Italy and he really studied those plazas, and he studied the activities that occurred there so that he could really understand why they were so important to that particular culture and how he could adapt them to his culture in Copenhagen. So he has built multiple public plazas and piazzas designed them throughout Copenhagen. And what he has found by studying the activity, and he actually was a student of his own work, he diligently went out and studied those piazzas and plazas after they were done to see how they were used. And the public spaces exponentially increased with activity and people, even though Copenhagen didn't grow. So just by simply providing those public spaces to the people that were there in that community, they were able to use them and adapt to them. There's other benefits. Certainly we know now a lot of companies are very interested in urban activity. Motorola is moving their headquarters out of Schaumburg, where they've been for 50 years, into downtown. Specifically, they cite the fact that they need to attract talent, but more importantly, cities are known for the innovation. And what you're finding right now is as there's an influx of venture capital into small and growing businesses, that influx is going into our downtowns. That's where the majority of that venture capital is being spent. Other disciplines are also standing up and taking notice. The health industry is increasingly more interested in the effects on the environment in terms of health. Mental health, there's a lot of study that's been done, and it's also been proven that people that live in walkable and active communities have lower rates of depression. Lately, we've been talking a lot about happiness, and again, this is another field that's growing. There's been recent research into what's called happiness economics, and it tries to gauge what level of economic health do people really start to become more happy. In happiness economics, what it found is that there is a growth in your happiness level up until the point that you make around an average income of $75,000. After that, it's all about the quality of your life. It's quality of life. It's your ability to socialize with other people. It's your ability to have a work-life balance. Interestingly enough, they also found that the longer a commute, the lower your happiness level really is. There's some other things about teeth health. Apparently, communities that people have very healthy teeth tend to be happier communities. But more recently, Boulder, Colorado was actually ranked as the #1 happiest place in the United States. And one of the factors that they stressed was the fact that people in Boulder are 17 times more likely to walk and bike than in any other place in the United States. Well, part of that is because they actually have that infrastructure there, and they're able to do that. So we shouldn't limit ourselves and when we're thinking about these things and say, why would we do that? Nobody's going to use it. Instead, we need to provide these spaces for these opportunities. We can't, as a community, get together if we don't have places where we can get together and share experiences. We have communities we have ethnic communities, we have aged communities, we have young people. We need to design for them all. We can't even get over our own differences if we can't find places that we can actually share common ground. And so if we're not designing these places for that, then we can't get over those stumbling blocks. But more importantly, us, the people of this community, we're unique and we're different, and we're what create the authenticity of our community. Nothing is the same from place to place. And so we have to be able to celebrate that and show that to other people so we can attract them to us. So I'd like to just leave you with Jane Jacobs. She was a great thinker, a wonderful advocate. Many of you may have read her book. I don't want to say single-handedly, but she mobilized people in New York City to actually save Greenwich Village from a future expressway. She wasn't an urban planner. She wasn't an engineer. She was a writer. She was an organizer, and she was an observer, an active participant in street life. And what she said is that, there's this ballet on the street that is unique to every place, and it's never repetitive. And it's something that I think we all need to strive for. We all need to take our place in ensuring that we have that opportunity Great cities attract talent, but it's talented people that actually take part in creating those places that stay. Thank you.